What's up everybody, welcome back. So in the last video of our multiplayer mech series, we set up the damage for our mech and for the AI. And in this episode I want to set up the damage FX, so our mech actually catches fire if he takes a certain amount of damage. And we're probably also going to set up dying for the mech, so the AI can kill us in the same way we can kill the AI. So let's take a look at the result of this project, or this episode. So if we take a certain amount of damage from the enemies, and this is the semi-finished project, then we will see little fires start on the mech. So over here the leg will catch fire and the turret will catch fire. So that's what we're gonna do in this episode, and also set up the death sequence where the mech explodes and falls to the ground. So that should be the result of this video. And let's just get started right away. So let me get my project up here. And that's this one. So we want to do most of this inside of our BP player mech. So let's open the character. And the first thing we're going to do is add a few arrays in here. And we want to set up an array for the bones where we want to spawn the FX. So we're going to set up an array of names, and we're going to name this the damage FX bones. So this is going to be an array of names. So turn it into a name and then right click to turn it into an array. And then we're going to compile, and we're going to add 5 entries to the array over here. And then I'm going to take a look at my example project for the bone names. And these are simply names from the skeletal mesh. So if we go to the character mesh and take a look over here, you can just pick 5 random bones pretty much where you want to spawn those FXs. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but obviously for the location where the fire spawns, you want to spread them around a little bit. So I picked 5 of them. And the first one is the leg back. So that's leg BK and then underscore 02 left. Then I'm gonna spawn the second one at the main gun bone. So main underscore gun. The third one is going to be leg pump front right. So leg pump underscore FR for front and then right. The fourth one is going to be leg back 01 right. So leg underscore BK underscore 01 underscore R. And the last one is leg front 03 left. So leg underscore FR underscore 03 underscore L. So again, you can simply take a look at the skeletal mesh and copy the bone names, or zoom in maybe, or pause the video, but these are the bone names that I picked. And the second thing we want to do is create an array of particle systems. So we're going to create another variable in here, and these are going to be our damage FXs. So simply call this damage FX. And then we're going to turn this into a cascade particle system, and that's a component. So cascade particle system component, and again this needs to be an array as well. So we don't need to set up any defaults in here. We're going to handle this array in the blueprint. So that's out of the way. Then we want to set up the actual functions, and or at least events in this case. So we're going to set up 2 multicast events, one for spawning the FX and one for removing the FX. And then we're going to set up a function that will call these events. So that's why we're creating the events first. So let's create a custom event. And the first one is multicast spawn damage FX. So multicast spawn damage FX. No. So we want this to be a multicast event, so we're going to set it to replicate as a multicast. And we want to give it one input, and that's the index of the damage array. So we're going to turn this into an index, and that's an integer. So we're going to grab our damage fx array in here, and we're going to get a copy of the index that we put into the event. And first of all, we're going to check if this is valid. So we're going to drag off is valid and plug it in. And we only want to spawn an fx at this location if it's not already valid. So we're going to continue from the is not valid pin. And over here, we're going to spawn an emitter attached. And we're going to attach this emitter to the character mesh. So we're going to drag in the character mesh, attach to component over here. Oh, I accidentally double clicked it. So now it's opening up Visual Studio. There we go. So for the emitter template, I'm going to use the fire from the starter content. So that's simply p fire particle system. And then we want to use the location type snap to target keep world scale over here, and we're going to attach it to the bone name that's in the same index. So we're going to grab our damage of X bones and we're going to get a copy of this again. And again, we're going to plug in the index from the array from the event over here, and that's the bone where we want to attach this fx. So we're going to plug that into the attach point name, and that should be good to go. We do want to make sure that we store this inside of our damage of X array so we can get rid of it later if we grab a health pickup and our health increases. So we're going to grab the damage of X array over here and we're going to set an array element. And then we are going to plug the return value from the spawn emitter attached into the item. We're going to enable size to fit, so this will expand the array if it's not already big enough. And again, we're going to plug in the index from the event into the index from the set array element node. So this will keep all of the arrays in sync. So we know which index we need to remove and what index belongs to what bone. So that's the spawn function, and now we're going to, or event, I'm sorry. And now we're going to create a second event to get rid of the fx. So that's multicast destroy damage fx. And again, this is going to be a multicast event. So on the right side, replicate it as a multicast. And for this one, we also need the index as an input. So we're going to add one input in here, and that's the index. And again, we want to make sure if this is valid. So we're going to grab our damage of X array, get a copy, plug in the index over here, and check if this index is valid. And in this case, we only want to destroy it if it's actually valid. So in this case, we want to continue from the is valid pin. And then we're simply going to drag off the getter again, and we're going to destroy this component. So into the is valid pin. And to make sure that our arrays will stay in sync, we're going to grab the set array element node again for the damage fx array. And in this case, we're simply going to set the index to an empty entry. So we're not going to plug anything into the item, but we do want to plug in the index from the event over here into the set array element node. So those are the two events that we need. And now we're going to set up the function that will actually handle the damage fx. So let's create a new function and call this handle damage fx. And let me grab my notes quickly. So we're going to give this function one input, and that's going to be a boolean. And this will tell us if the health increased or decreased. So we're going to say health increased. It decreased. Okay, nice. So health increased, and this needs to be boolean. And then it's pretty simple, to be honest. So we're going to check the amount of health of our mech, and if it's below a certain point, we're going to spawn the fire fx. And in the same way, we're going to get rid of it if it goes above a certain point. So first of all, we're going to grab a branch and we're going to check if we took damage or that our health increased by a pickup or something. So let's grab a branch and plug it in like this. And the second thing we want to do is grab another branch. So we're going to plug this into the false pin first. So this is when we take damage. Our health didn't increase, but it decreased. And then we're going to simply grab our health variable and we're going to check if this is less or equal than 15. So we want to start with the smallest value in this case. So less or equal than 15. And then we're simply going to say spawn damage fx. And if we are all the way below 15, we want to spawn it at the last index of the array. So in this case, we're going to set the index to 4. Then we can copy all of this stuff and paste it below here. Plug this one into the false pin. And in this case, we're going to say if it's less than or equal to 30. So if it's not smaller than 15, it won't do anything, and it will continue over here to check if it's below 30, and if it is, then it's gonna spawn the damage of x at another bone, and in this case we're gonna say at index 3. So we can continue doing this. So we're gonna add another one over here, plug it into the false pin. Over here we're gonna say if it's smaller than 45, and then we're gonna spawn it at index number 2. Paste it again, plug it into the false pin. So in this case, if it's smaller than 60, we're going to spawn it at index 1. And the last one, it doesn't want to paste it, so let me copy and paste it over here. Thank you. So if it's less than 75, then we're going to spawn it at index 0. So that's pretty basic. And then we're going to do the other side. So we're going to go back up to the first branch. So this is if our health increased from a pickup or something like that. And in this case, we're going to check if our health is greater than. So we're going to grab a branch again, plug it in. So grab the health value and we're going to check if it's greater than 75. So greater than 75. That's our condition. If this is true, we want to get rid of all of the fx that might be still there. So we're going to grab a for each loop and plug it in. So if you hold the F key on your keyboard and then click, you get a for each loop. We're going to plug in our damage fx array. And then we're simply going to say destroy damage fx. So destroy damage fx, and that's our multicast event over here. And we can plug in the index like so. So this will check if it's actually valid or not. So if there's no index or no fx at the index in the array, nothing will happen, and we also won't get any errors. So this should work fine. And then we're simply going to continue doing this again. So we're going to copy and paste the branch over here, plug this into the false pin. So we're going to say in this case if it's greater than 60, and now we want to use for loop instead of a for each loop. So we're going to look for a for loop, this one over here, and then we're going to start at index 1 and we're going to end at index 4. So we're going to skip index 0 in this case. So if we have a health value that's lower than 75 but greater than 60, we still have one fire fx left. And in this case, again, we're going to copy this node. So destroy damage fx, plug it into the loop body and connect the index as well. So you can see where this is going. We're going to copy and paste this again over here. Plug this one into the false pin. So if it's greater than 45, we're going to get rid of index 2 at the beginning and then 3 and 4 as well. And we need to do this 2 more times. So plug this into the false pin after you pasted another one. Over here we're going to say if it's greater than 30, and then we're going to remove index 3 and 4. So first index 3, last index 4. And then for the last time, if it's greater than 15. So let's plug this in over here, change the value to 15. And in this case we can get rid of the for loop, plug in the true pin, and we only want to get rid of index number 4 over here. Okay, so that's the handle damage fx function. It's pretty simple, but it works like a charm, so why not keep it simple if it works. So with this setup, we need to go back into the event graph and we want to change something in the damage event over here to make it work. So let's go to the event any damage, and this only executes on the server, and our handle damage fx function will also only execute on the server. So let's add a little comment in here, by the way, that says server. And this will call the multicast events, and this will make sure that all of the instances will spawn the fx. So for the event any damage, we're simply going to go all the way to the end over here where we have the locally controlled branch, and after that we're going to plug in our handle damage fx function in both of the branches. And our health decreased, so we want to keep the boolean false over here, and that will actually make it work. Now there is one thing that I want to add for the testing to make sure that we can also add health to see that the fx will disappear as well. And because we don't have any health pickups yet, we're simply gonna make it with a little keybind so that we can add health by pressing the 1 key on our keyboard. So let's right click in an empty spot and we're gonna look for keyboard 1. So that's simply a key pressed event. And if we press the key, we're going to increase the health. So we're going to grab a setter for the health, plug it in, grab our current health, and we're going to add 15 to it. So let's add 15 over here. And we want to clamp it to make sure that we don't exceed 100. So we're going to clamp a float. Minimum is 0, maximum is 100, and plug it into the health setter. Now, because this is a key event, this will always execute locally, only on the local instance, because that's the player that has a keyboard. So to make sure, let's call this local. And so we always want the server to set the health. And the reason we set it first on the local instance is because this will reduce the feeling of lag. So if we would immediately replicate this to the server, then for clients it could take a little moment before the health increases. If we set it locally first and then make sure that the server updates it and replicates it to the client, it will see the values match and everything is okay. So this will simply make things feel a little smoother on the clients. So first locally set the new health, then we're going to grab a branch in here and we're going to check if we are the server. So is server, because local can be server or client, that doesn't say anything. If we are the server, we are simply going to call our handle damage fx function. So plug it in over here. And in this case, we want to say our health increased. So we're going to enable the bool. And if we are a client, then we need to make sure that we have the server do it for us. So we're going to create a little custom event over here and call this server at health. Like so. So this needs to replicate server side. So we're going to say run on server. And it needs to be called by the only client. And that's okay because this is an input event. So that will work. And then we're simply going to do this again. So we're going to copy the setter with the clamp and the add node and plug it in over here. And then we want to have the server call our handle damage fx. So we're going to call that as well and make sure we enable the health increased boolean. So that will make the actual adding of the health work. And now we only want to make sure that our HUD also updates. So back into the key pressed event for the clients, we're going to call our server at health first. And then for both of them, we're going to call our update health bar. And that's actually over here for me. So I not accidentally, but I happened to be on the exact same part of the graph where this is, but we simply want to call our player controller, get our HUD, and then call the update health function. So let's copy these nodes, paste them over here, and we want to plug in our health value. So this needs to be local because this is the HUD, and we need the local player controller for that, but that's not an issue because we are already local because this is a key event. So this should make it work. So now if we press 1, we can increase our health and check if the damage effects actually disappears. So let's hit save and then let's run a little test. So first of all, I'm going to do a 1-player test and simply see if this works or not. And I kind of want to increase the window. There we go. So you can see the damage effect spawning right now, and we have a bunch of fires going on. And before I'm dead, I'm gonna hit the 1 key a couple of times, and now you will see the fires actually disappeared as well. And now they come back when I take new damage. So that's working, and we cannot die yet, so this doesn't really matter. But you can see the fires are actually burning, so that's good. Now let's make sure this actually replicates and is visible for all instances. So let's hit a 2-player game. And let me grab both of the windows in here. So let's make sure for the server it already worked, but we want to make sure that client can actually see it. And that appears to be good. So on the right side we can actually just see the server burning. Now I'm gonna walk in between of the shots over here, and then the fires should start for the client as well. And as you can see, that works, and we can see him on both of the screens, so that's good. Now for the client, I'm gonna go back out of here and hit the 1 key a couple of times, and now you will see the fires disappear, so that's working. And let's make sure the host can do the same thing. And again, the fires disappear on both screens, so things actually replicate as they should. And we don't have any errors, so that's cool. Okay, so that's the damage effects part. Now let's take a look at setting up dying for the mech as well, so we have all of that stuff out of the way. So let's set up dying for the mech, and for that we want to use a multicast event again. So we're going to go to an empty spot on the graph, and we're going to create a new custom event and call this multicast die. So first of all, let's make sure it's actually a multicast event. So set it on the right side, replication multicast. And then there's a few things we want to do, but this is not too complicated. So first of all, drag over here and we're going to set actor tick enabled. And instead of enabling it, we're going to disable it to make sure that our tick function stops running and we cannot aim the turret of the mech anymore because that's handled by tick. So we're going to disable tick. Then the next thing we're going to do is grab our mesh and we're going to set the animation mode again, like we did with the AI as well. So set animation mode, and instead of running an animation blueprint, we're going to say use an animation asset. But we're not going to define the asset, so there won't be any animations playing anymore. And the animation instance also doesn't tell us to play new animations when we are in Ragdoll. So we won't get any movement in the skeletal mesh. Then we're going to grab the mesh again, and we're going to set the collision profile name. So set collision profile name. And we also did this with the AI, so this simply refers to the collision profile on the skeletal mesh over here. If you scroll down to collision, there we have the presets, and we're going to set it to the Ragdoll preset. So let's go back to the event graph, and over here simply type Ragdoll with a capital R and double L. So this needs to match the name exactly in the collision preset. And then we're going to tell the mesh to simulate physics. So drag off the mesh again and set simulate physics. And we want to enable simulation. So this will make the mesh go into Ragdoll. Then we want to grab our capsule component and make sure it doesn't have any collision anymore. So drag in the capsule component and set collision enabled. And we're simply going to say no collision. So plug that one in as well. And then we want to disable the inputs, so we also can't move anymore. And to do that, we need to be on the local instance. So we're going to grab a branch over here. We're going to check if we are locally controlled. So pawn is locally controlled. Plug that one in over here. If we are, we're going to disable the input and we need to do it on the player controller. So we're going to drag in our Mech player controller and then disable input. Plug this one into the true pin and make sure that the player controller is plugged into the player controller pin and the target is the pawn. So that's self. So make sure the player controller is on the lower pin. And then we're going to spawn a little bit of explosion FX to make this look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to grab a for each loop, plug that in over here and also grab the false pin. So it will actually spawn on all instances and not only the local instance. And I'm simply going to use the damage FX bones array. So let's grab that one. And I'm going to spawn an explosion at every bone. So we want to spawn an emitter at location in this case. So drag off here and spawn emitter at location. And for the locations, we're going to grab the array element and get the socket location. And this socket is on the character mesh. So we want to grab the character mesh component and then get a socket location. And for the name of the location, we're going to grab the array element. Plug this one into the location over here. So we don't need a rotation, the scale is 1, that's fine. We do need to make sure we set up the actual emitter template. So I'm going to use explosion hit opponent, and that's from the howitzer pack that we downloaded at the beginning. So explosion hit opponent. Let me double check spelling. So it's explo hit opponent. This one p underscore lm underscore explo hit opponent from the Paragon howitzer pack we downloaded at the beginning of the series. And to make it even a bit nicer, we're also going to spawn a sound. So we're going to drag off here again and do play sound at location. And for the location, we can grab that from the socket location again. So plug that one in over here. And then we're going to spawn the explosion large sound. So explosion large. We're going to select the Q over here. I'm going to dim it down a little bit. So 0.6, but do whatever you prefer. And that should actually be everything that we want to do. So now we need to make sure that we call this multicast die event, and we're going to do that at the end of the damage function. So again, the event any damage. We're going to go all the way to the end where we added the handle damage fx node, and at this point we want to check if we are dead or not. So we're going to grab a branch and we're going to check if our health is equal to 0. So drag off here equal to 0. Plug it in, and if it's true, we're going to call our multicast die event, like so. So this event ran server side, so that's good. The multicast will be called by the server, and that should make it work for all of the instances. So that was pretty simple, and that should already work. So let's compile and save, and let's just test it multiplayer, why not? So first of all, the server is going to die because that's where the AI will actually aim at. So let's make sure that's working. There we go, we have a nice explosion and the mesh goes into ragdoll. So now let's grab our client and we're gonna go over here where we're gonna catch the shots, and we need to look at the server screen at this case, but we're gonna make that work later in the series. So that's actually working as well, and the client can die and the server will see it. So that's not too bad, and again, no actual error. So we're going to make sure later in the series that the AI will pick a new target if the target they are firing at is dead. So we won't end up with the weird results that we just had, but in this case we are only interested in the actual dying, and that worked, and that also replicated, so that's good. So that's going to be all for this episode. In the next episode, we're going to make sure that we can spawn in AI. So right now we simply have a few placed them in the level. Next episode we're going to make sure they spawn in through the game mode and they will pick a target. So not all of the AI will automatically go at the server. We're going to make sure they spread their interest, and some of them go at clients and other ones at the server. So next episode is going to be a little bit more interesting again, and this was pretty basic. So thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like. If you want to get the project files, go to the Discord and you can download them there for free. Thanks for watching, talk to you later, bye bye.